we have Brandon Barnes, a real estate investor and owner of REI Live. REI Live is a really unique platform because it used to be an in-person meetup, but now you went virtual, right?
Yes, yes. It's we're doing this thing virtual just to keep it going, and it's actually allowed us to be able to bring even speakers from further around the nation to come speak, because it's just as easy for them to hop on a Zoom call and deliver some great content virtually.
Yeah, it's been interesting how we all have had to adapt to the situation. I mean, even showing rental units and stuff differently now. So, frankly, it's gotten easier
It has.
when it comes to some of that stuff. So, but I mean, we're going to be covering a lot of ground here because I know you have a lot of experience in wholesaling. But I wanted to make sure that we kick things right off with everybody knowing how to get a hold of you and learning more about REI Live. Head over to sendmoreoffers.com. And I also understand you're pretty active on LinkedIn and Facebook. In fact, I think Facebook is probably where you throw out a lot of information regarding REI Live, right?
For sure, for sure. Everything ultimately boils back down to my landing page, as you just mentioned, sendmoreoffers.com. There's the coaching, my social, the monthly meetup, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I'm just excited to talk a little bit more to your folks about my journey wholesaling and how I leverage that to get to become a real estate investor and do a number of things in the real estate space here in Atlanta.
Yeah. So let's start things off at the beginning, if you don't mind. Like, how did you get into this whole wholesaling and real estate investing thing?
Yeah, man, it was a lot of chance, perfect timing, perfect opportunity, perfect situation that came from a bad situation. I always wanted to, I thought that I was going to climb the corporate ladder. My father had been a CPA and ended up working for Coca-Cola for 25 years or so. And so I thought that was going to be my path as well. But I also always wanted to be an entrepreneur, from selling candy to cutting grass to doing a number of odd things coming up. So much so that once I got to Purdue University, where I ultimately graduated, I took the entrepreneurship certificate program, which was like a 15 credit ordeal that allowed me to kind of understand what it took to develop a startup company. But it was my idea that I would be able to, have some great idea further down the line. Well, that didn't happen that way, because upon graduating, I took my first job with the H.J. Heinz company in Pittsburgh, met some great friends, and then I was going to rotate to different cities and different positions and come out as a manager. Well, they got bought out after they had moved me to the Quad Cities, which is on the Illinois-Iowa border.
Mhm.
And I had to find a local job. So I started working with the Kraft Oscar Mayer company. And then they got bought out by the same company. Had an opportunity to move to Atlanta because there was an opening at Talenti, which was a gelato company, small gelato company, but they got bought out too. 3 for 3. They got bought out by Unilever. So now they're a Unilever company. And I was fired 2 weeks after getting married on 10/10/15. And, after stumbling around a little bit, by December, I reached out to a buddy of mine that I met in Pittsburgh and said, "Hey, what's that real estate thing you were always talking about when we used to hang out and chill out in Pittsburgh?" And he was like, "Man, look, I moved to Atlanta. Come by. I'll share the mentor program with you. We'll do this thing called Driving for Dollars. We can listen to the content, and then I'll kind of be, your guide into this space." So January 2016, I started working with him, and kind of the rest is history from there.
Hmm. So, everybody kind of likes to start, or at least likes the concept of wholesaling. That seems to be like the gateway drug when it comes to real estate investing. It's the low hanging fruit. And,
I'd say that.
and, and there's like this romanticism around that they're just going to find these deals. It's getting into real estate investing without money out of pocket kind of a thing. talk a little bit about that. Yeah, you're shaking your head no already. It's not as easy as as some people paint it, is it?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There are people that want to call themselves wholesalers that literally are just like scouring the internet and Facebook groups and people's emails and then try to repackage that deal to their buyers list and they call themselves wholesalers. That's not wholesaling. Like the wholesaling, when you boil it down, is the art of finding off market properties at a discount repeatedly.
Hmm.
It's that is it, the core of that. And um, for me, it's always direct to seller. Like if you don't actually hold a contract or an equitable interest in a property, you're not really wholesaling. Like, yeah, we can do a JV deal here or there, but it's being able to establish a relationship, get in front of homeowners, and have them agree, and you agree together to transact on their property, to go
Hmm.
under contract, and that takes resources. It's going to take some amount of money, and you can, if you don't have a lot of that resource, it's going to take a lot of your time. But even if you're going to drive for dollars, knock on doors, write letters, you still got to have gas money and postage
Hmm.
at its core. You have to have some level of funds to get going, but then also some smarts and a whole lot of effort, grit, determination, and time.
Sure. So if somebody's looking to get into wholesaling for that first time, they want to get that first opportunity under contract, where do you think they should direct their attention?
Personally, I think that you should start going down to the courthouse immediately. There are great, motivated groups of people at the courthouse. So I would go down. I would get familiar with the dispossessory office, so the office that holds evictions, and I would get very familiar with the probate office, office where people petition to probate the estate of a loved one or a colleague. Somebody passes, that estate has to be closed out, and if they own real estate, that person who goes down and does that and petitions for them, you can reach out to that person to see if they would sell the property in as is condition without an agent at the price of their choosing. So I would start off there. There's somebody just asked me that question, if you got dropped out of dropped into a city, didn't have any resources or tools, $500. I would go down to the courthouse and I would get those records that were filed in the last month or 2 months, and then I would just start hand dialing. And if I didn't have a phone, I would just go to the address of the petitioner or the person, the plaintiff that filed an eviction. I would go and knock on their door and say, "Hey, would you consider selling that property that you filed an eviction or a probate?" That's where I would start.
They know, something that really stands out there is that you're doing a task or you're suggesting something that, frankly, a lot of people, that's where things start to fall apart. You're actually talking about going to the court, physically going to the courthouse, collecting this information. Some places don't have this stuff online. You actually physically have to go down there. You have to physically start dialing for dollars, and or you're even proposing going to the houses directly. A lot of people aren't willing to make that step, and frankly, it's those steps and that digging that finds the gold. I mean, you really actually have to go through this level of work and detail.
Talk about gold. Like, that's real gold. Those are some of the highest levels of motivation. If you're filing an eviction or you're filing or petitioning for probate, a lot of people do deals, and the bulk of our deals in my company are absentee owner properties. So there's just tired landlords. That is the bulk of them. But the biggest deals, oftentimes are those probate, or, maybe it's an eviction, which they're kind of considering a tired landlord as well. But those are where that there is some inherent level of motivation. There is,
Mhm.
because they just filed these cases at the civil court.
Sure. So, while this seems to be a good spot to just remind everybody, if you like to hear or learn more about Brandon and what he offers, especially his REI Live make sure you head over to sendmoreoffers.com, and especially find his Facebook page, because I think that's where most of his information regarding the REI Live is available. And I understand you get some pretty great speakers at these events, so it's definitely
Yeah.
worth people's time.
Yeah, we've had some awesome speakers. Zach Booth is like the king of driving for dollars. He just was this past month. We've had Elijah and Jennifer, that they're like the king and queen of fire damage profit, and really focus on if you have a fire damage property. But that meetup group was something that I took over March of 2019, and what it opened up for me was an opportunity to be able to help others that wanted to learn about how to get into real estate. And so this whole Send More Offers thing it's a coaching program, but it's a philosophy on how we're able to do deals in a consistent manner without having to go to every property in person. And
Mm,
so that's where that whole similar offers thing comes from, because I've once I started to build my business, and wanted to remove myself from going to every appointment, and I was seeing like if I couldn't get out 10 offers in a week, we weren't going to get any signed contracts. I figured out a way to um, come up with the offer price quickly over the phone, to expedite the conversations and the follow-up by keeping our leads in the dialer, and then automate the actual offer delivery process through a DocuSign and an automation within our CRM, and I packaged that up, and that's how I went from doing 6 figures in a year to 7 figures. Was just that simple change, putting somebody in that seat, and starting to only go to the property after it was under contract. That really changed the game for my business. That's how we went from 6 to 7 figures. And that's really what I share with our coaching students these days, is how to send more offers, and hence the whole sendmoreoffers.com.
no, so I'm glad that you brought this up, because I mean that this is part of what I had read on your site and a few other places regarding offers over appointment strategy. So let's talk about that a little bit, because that's always something that it's almost a mindset thing,
It
to
is.
try to get comfortable doing what you're
It is.
suggesting. So talk a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, I fought it for a while. My original coach, my original mentors was always about, go to the property, sit down, belly to belly. This is the best close ratio. Talk
Build
about
rapport.
build rapport,
Yeah.
talk about everything else under the sun other than the property. Build great rapport. And then when I had a buddy talk about, hey, we were tired of dealing with Podio, tired of being in task hell, tired of running to every appointment, especially they were in like the DMV area, so it was a lot of travel necessary for everything. And they said you can do deals without going to these properties, and I wasn't a believer until I put somebody in that seat, because what I found out is that they ended up speaking to just so many more people. If we kept them in the dialer, we were already cold calling using like a triple line dialer, like
Mm,
Mojo Sales. Instead of sending the lead out into like Podio and hand dialing, I just started to group them and set a follow-up call for my acquisition manager. So he's able to power dial all of the leads and have, longer conversations. And that was the big thing. We switched from having like a 5-10 minute conversation to where, you'll sometimes spend 30 minutes on the phone, and it's building rapport over
mm,
the phone. It's a longer conversation. And then I realized the only way that I could make offers without going to the property and seeing the repairs specifically was if I just based my offer off of homes that already sold in the area by looking at the price history and looking at the photos. And so it was those two things. It's a little bit more detailed than that, but it was those two things, or those few things, that actually allowed me to transition and put somebody in that seat, and send over as many offers as I could do in 3 months, he's able to do in a week.
Hmm.
So it's 50 plus offers each and every week at least. It's
So,
working.
yeah. So, you're kind of sidestepping, and this goes back to what we were talking about before, as with the whole pandemic and everything, we've been having to be a little bit more imaginative regarding some of this stuff. But when you're throwing out those offers, so you get it under contract. I'm just trying to get my mind wrapped around this a little bit. So when you get it under contract, that's when you actually physically send somebody, and then is there like a renegotiation period at that point if you find other things that you just doesn't support what you offered?
Yeah, it's rare. It's rare though, and rare is relative. It's out of every 5 deals, we may have to renegotiate or get a reduction on 2. It's no different than when I was going to the appointments in person,
Mm,
because I would go to the appointment in person and lock something up on the spot, and then there's times that I still had to go back and renegotiate, reduce, or terminate.
mm,
Um, but what happened is we leave. We don't stretch to try to make something work. It has to fit for the most part within our range, and by not stretching to try to make things work, and making offers with a 20K margin built in, it allows us that buffer room to make a mistake. So it was kind of two things that happened simultaneous. I worked with Todd Toback that mentioned, hey, if you expect more bigger deals and you build in a 20K margin or so, you'll start to get bigger deals. You expect bigger deals, you'll get them. But then also, it was also that time when we switched to sending the offers without going to the appointment, and that 20K margin gave us a buffer to where if we did screw something up, we could still pull out a 10K deal.
mm.
Versus when I started off, my original coach said, hey, 10K all day. If it's not 10K, it's not a good deal. And that 10K could evaporate very quickly.
Very.
So right. So we put in
Yeah.
that 20K margin, and we're still able to do deals without having to renegotiate, reduce. We're not just locking up deals for the heck of it, knowing that we're going back to reduce. That's not how we want to do business. We want to get it right the first time. And we're usually able to do so building in a 20K margin and being very firm on that, as we see the numbers when we're doing the evaluation.
Sure. So could you talk a little bit about how you calculate your numbers then? Like how does
Yep.
somebody, the, evaluate this property to make sure that they're making that proper offer?
All right. So the thing that I noticed was there's only 3 different types of comps when I'm looking out in a map. So call goes live. We're talking to a seller. I can click a Zillow button and it'll populate the map um, of around the subject property. And so I'll draw a circle, stay within all the main roads, don't go over highways or anything like that. Try to stay within the subdivision, and be within 500 square feet of the subject property's square footage. Preferably if, I'm looking at a brick ranch, my only comps I want to consider are other brick ranches. But we're looking for like to like. And so when I see what's sold in the area, the trick is there's usually a sale before the sale, and that tells me what a property sold to the investor that did the work, and we just subtract our margin from that, and that's our mayo.
Oh, I see. So you're actually doing comps based on possible sellers to other investors.
Yes,
Ah,
i
yeah.
i seek out the number that an investor bought it at, and I subtract 20K from that, and that's my mayo, and we anchor below
I
that.
see. I see. Yeah, because where I think a lot of people were confused, including myself, is that you're looking at basically properties on the MLS that have ARV, after repair value, for those,
Right.
and trying to calculate or backtrack from there. So
Right.
what you're doing is that makes a lot more sense.
The sale before the sale. And so there's 3 types. There's the one that sold to the rehabber that, like a year ago it sold for like 100K less. There's the ones that sold to landlords, because if you look in Zillow, you'll see the last sale was $900 a month, and then there's usually a sale prior to that before they fixed it up and rented it.
Mhm.
Or sometimes there's, the owner occupied one that it's in a really great neighborhood and it's sold fully furnished. In that case, if my subject property is in a very, very great shape, I'll just subtract the 20K off of the one sale that happened if it's sold, like move in ready, really great area. But yes, we're always looking at the sale before the sale. We base our offer price off of what we can assume it's sold to another investor, all things equal.
Sure. No, that's a great tip.
You see
That's
how
really
fast you can make those offers? Like if I'm just seeking out that number, I can make that offer so fast and on to the next one and get out 10, plus each day.
right. Right. And do you feel like when you're talking to these people, then do you have to explain your number a little bit, like so you can let them do some mental gymnastics to get themselves down to that number? How does that conversation go? Or are you finding that you're doing so many offers that it kind of comes out in the wash?
More so it's the so many offers it comes out in the wash, but it's we're anchoring below that mayo, right? And we're trying to work our way up. And of course, I'm not having these conversations as much anymore, really hardly ever. My acquisition manager is great. He's a former Marine, fought in Afghanistan. He actually lives in Mexico for his mental clarity, mental sanity, but he's great. He's a great on the phone. And I built the script out there for him, which just it's every lead that he speaks to, we're going to warm them up, we're going to ask permission, we're going to kind of qualify and diagnose, discuss solutions, make the offer, try to get closed, and then boomerang. That's our process. And so he's putting offers out and saying, hey, this is based on what I'm seeing sold in your area, and this is based on what I think that we'll need to do to bring your property up to speed. But um, the one thing I will suggest to all listeners is that you let them know, if you are in essence mainly going to be wholesaling, you let them know that that is what you're going to do. So we do tell homeowners that vast majority of the times we're going to immediately resell your property for profit. We don't pose as the rehabber.
Mm,
There are some times that we have done, minor work, paint, carpet, trash it out, and we'll let them know that we have held a few properties, but it's you know 3% of everything that we do, right? And so,
mhm.
but we let them know that up front so that it just makes the dispositions, the sales process, just that much smoother. They understand who's coming to the property to view it when we do the walkthrough, and they do understand, if we do ultimately assign the property, that they'll see an assignment fee to us because we've sold it to someone else. But we hold their hand, we make sure that they get what they ask for, and we handle all of the paperwork. We make it a speedy, convenient, easy transaction, and that's what they pay us for.
Sure. So and I'm already can tell, and I hope you have a little bit more time, because I know we scheduled this for 30 minutes, and I'm hugging on that pretty good here already. So can I bend your ear a little bit longer?
For sure.
So let's change the topic slightly, because one of the things that I find when people are getting into wholesaling and they ask me questions, the concept of find the deal and the buyers will come. I hear that actually a little too often. Let's talk a little bit about the importance of building your buyers list and where you should start, and how important do you place that?
I do place importance on it for sure. Um, but what I tell my coaching students is that I do want them to find the deal,
Mm,
right, and build their buyers list over time. Um, because I think that's the more important skill is being able to negotiate with sellers. But I've fortunately built relationships with some very key buyers over time. I do have a large buyers list. Um, and some of that was from trading with some folks, and then putting out an email and letting people know who I am. And now I have an assistant that really focuses on engaging people via social media and building our buyers list each and every week. However, I place for my students the importance on getting the deal, and buyers will come. But oftentimes, I'm usually able to assist them early on,
Mm.
leveraging my buyers list for their deals. Even if they're not in Atlanta, I usually know somebody who's also been in a mentor program that I can connect them with. But you make a very good point. There is great relationships to be had. There is money to be made by focusing on building relationships with buyers, um, having a strong buyers list, and being able to JV with others. um, you know there are people that I know specifically, for instance, like Keegley, New Western, Net Worth Acquisitions, that are like corporate wholesalers that make a business off of just finding the buyer.
Mm.
Millions can be made off of just finding the buyer. So I 100% agree with it, that you should definitely focus on your buyers. But I do still tell a lot of my coaching students, hey, if you're in Atlanta specific, especially, find the deal. I'll help you with the buyers. And I want them to focus on finding the sellers first. But you make a
Yeah.
good point.
No, well, see, that is what I was hoping you were going to say, actually.
Okay.
Because what you just did was, although people aren't buying or building that buyers list themselves, they're taking that mind exercise to find somebody to JV or leverage your network within your real estate investing
Yes.
group, or somebody who already has that buyers list. I
Yes.
mean, there's an exit for it.
For
I've
sure.
just unfortunately have seen people get houses and properties under contract, and now they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's
I want,
definitely.
and then they're forced to cancel it or something because that's like a mental block. They don't think about asking the quote unquote competition.
Right.
Um, when it comes to real estate investing, what I found is really interesting compared to all of the other jobs I've ever done is that a majority of the real estate investing community is actually really a community. I don't run into a lot of quote unquote competition per se. A lot of people are really willing to help you out and help you find that buyer, or
I agree. I
it's
agree.
it's
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 kind of
it's kind
nice.
of crazy how when people do talk about small world, it is somewhat a small world if you're active in your city and you're doing deals. Like, you will see and run into the same people at some of the same events, and it's great to be able to collaborate with the folks that are in your network or in your
Yeah.
city.
So, with some of the strategies that you're incorporating right now, and we probably don't have time, and it'd probably be another entire episode, but how have you found that you can do what you're suggesting then with your offers over appointment strategy, that you can do a lot of this virtually now and
Yes,
wholesale in other markets?
yes. That's I always get this mixed up. That's the benefit, not the feature.
Mm.
Like that's the byproduct of leading first with the offer, is that you can do this virtually. I wasn't trying to have a virtual, be a virtual wholesaler, but the byproduct of this leading first with the offer is that you can do it from anywhere. And so, even though majority of the deals that we do are here in Atlanta, they're still virtual, but this is our market at the same time. We jumped into Charlotte right before COVID happened, and we've had
Hmm.
success. We did close 3 or 4 deals. We had about 6 or 7, but I went on and pulled back out of Charlotte because it was literally we started marketing in Charlotte like February, and then COVID happened in March, and so I couldn't control the buy side as much. I did leverage network up there, but I couldn't control like boots on the ground and stuff like that. So I just went and pulled it back in, but very quickly and immediately, within a month, we had our first contract in a new market, by employing the same strategy. So, though I don't promote like, hey, I'm a virtual wholesaling coach. I promote that. Hey, I send more offers than the next person. But the benefit of that is that it can be virtual.
Hmm. Yeah, and that virtual wholesaling is always a hot topic, and maybe we can bug you sometime and we can chat a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit more in detail
I'll be
on
back.
that sometime. But with that, it's just been really a great conversation. I enjoyed this quite a bit. As I just as a reminder, make sure you head over to sendmoreoffers.com for more details. Check out REI Live on Facebook for your next event. And other than that, is there any questions? Is there a question that you wish I would have asked you here today?
Um, no. I think that we got pretty far into kind of the beginning and the building. Um, what I do place a heavy emphasis on, and what I am most proud of, is the team that I've built.
Hmm.
Because when I talk to people about like what I've done, I remind them that like my team, my core three are a family, and really five. My acquisition manager John, my longest cold caller Sharon, my longest assistant Nicole, and then there's Florence and Chelsea as well. Like I would be nothing without them. And it's the team that I built, and I worked with them. Like not many people have a cold caller that they've had on their team for 3+ years,
Yeah, that's
because
right.
that's a tough job. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears shed over the years. But that's something that I think that is super important about building teams. So that's something that maybe on the next conversation we could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and I would like to talk a little bit too about your marketing strategy, because you've leaned into the cold calling a couple times while we're talking on the phone, and as everybody is doing yellow letters and bandit signs, I'm running into more and more people leveraging cold calling,
Hmm. That's my
and
bread and butter.
and that's a whole episode too. Um,
Right.
So with that, remember, I wanted to kind of summarize a few like takeaways while we were on the phone, and if you think of any others that you can think of, please pipe in. But
Sure.
one of the first thing that I think Brandon made it pretty clear: wholesaling has some legwork involved, and you have to get your hands dirty, especially when you're starting out. Listen to Brandon when it comes to getting to the courthouse, driving to properties, cold calling, and you are going to have some uncomfortable conversations. And but in the end, that's where the gold is, and that's where you really need to have that focus, and eventually at least start making that uncomfortable comfortable.
I
It
agree.
never completely gets comfortable, but
I agree.
you'll start to get used to it. Um, I really like how you calculate what you're offering for your offers over appointment strategy, looking at that sale before the sale.
Hmm.
Um, we are so focused on that ARV and what that neighborhood can possibly support. But if you're doing these quick offers like you're suggesting, that taking a step back and looking at the dollar amounts of the sale before the sale, fantastic. That
Love
is
it.
a great takeaway. And if anybody pulls one thing from this show, I'm going to say it's probably that.
Right.
Um, and then when we're talking about building that buyer's list, you don't necessarily have to be so focused on building that buyer's list yourself, but look at your local or your real estate community, see who can help you, even if it's a joint venture in some way.
Right.
Half of a deal or part of a deal is better than no deal. So leverage your network, leverage those people around you, and you'll probably learn quite a bit on the way.
Right. For sure.
So is anything else
I
that
think you
stood
hit
out?
it. I think you hit it. That was a good top three.
I really, really appreciate your time, Brandon. I hope we can chat again sometime.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, we probably could generate another couple episodes just out of some of the topics we brushed on here today.
For sure. Yeah. We'll be back in a few months, maybe top of the year, spring.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'd
So
be great.
thank you again, sir. We'll talk again.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Jack.